But moving to another story now, coalition senators are calling for changes to their own government's new citizenship legislation. They say the plan to strengthen English language requirements for new citizens is too tough. The laws announced earlier this year would introduce more extensive language and values tests and a 4-year waiting period before immigrants become citizens. A Senate committee found that a good understanding and the use of the English language is essential to fulfil the obligations of Australian citizenship. The chair of that committee joins me now, Senator Ian Macdonald. Senator, thank you for being patient with your time and thank you for joining us here this morning. Essentially, you found that what Peter Dutton was proposing was too tough. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, no, we've recommended the bill be passed, but we have suggested that the government should look at a couple of issues before bringing the bill to Parliament. One of those was on the English language test, which needs clarifying. I have to say the bill doesn't really have a standard. The department have made certain comments. I think Mr Dutton, in what might have been a throwaway comment, mentioned the level 6 of a particular standard. It's not clear from the bill, and I think the government needs to clarify just what the standard should be. Right. Certainly, if they were referring to the level 6 university entrance standard, the committee thought that was not appropriate, and committee members know a lot of people who would not pass that test, but who have become very, very valuable citizens of Australia. But the committee does think that citizenship's important, it's a value. Sometimes it's not as well valued as it should be, and on that basis we think that the bill is heading in the right direction. It's basically correct, but needs a little bit of refinement.
So did the committee land at an area where how tough the English language test should be? Was there a university, a different level, not level 6, or was there a standard? How difficult is that to clarify in the bill?
We did have a lot of evidence from linguists, people who deal with these things as a profession. There are a lot of different standards, and they grade in the one we're talking about. It grades 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right up to 9. 6 that's been spoken about is a little over halfway.
Right.
The current one, I think, is about 3.
The university standard would seem...
Well, that's the 6th one, and I think that would be. Mind you, we do make a comment that some of the English coming out of university graduates is a pretty low bar to jump over, but that's another issue, I guess. But really, we think it probably should be a little bit more than what it is now, but certainly not university
And
entrance.
what other recommendations have you made? Because I note there are a number, I think 4 key recommendations, 3 key recommendations, and the 4th recommendation is that the bill be passed with these. So talk us through the 2-year ban on applications following 3 failed attempts.
Well, under the bill, 3 failed attempts and you're out. We think that might be a bit harsh. There are a lot of people, evidence shows, that a lot of people who just keep applying. They have no real interest in getting a better language or understanding Australian values. We think, you know, there is a need for a limit, but for genuine people, we think that beyond 3 would be okay, but perhaps with a cost recovery fee that would deter all but the very genuine. Look, we believe you need English to fully appreciate and take part of and take advantage from Australian citizenship. You do need to have a good understanding of English. We don't want a lot of evidence about women particularly being disadvantaged, but you don't want women who can't understand English being told by their husbands what they should do, what the newspapers are saying, what Sky News is saying. We want everyone to be able to have a basic understanding that they know what's happening so they can cast their own vote in elections and not be told what to do by their husbands.
So is it your understanding that this would be palatable to the government, to Peter Dutton, and this would pass?
Well, look, these are recommendations that the committee makes after very careful consideration on how the bill would be improved. We've also suggested there were a number of cases brought before, individual cases, where people were just on the cusp of applying and now will have to wait 4 years. We thought the minister should have some sort of discretionary power in deserving cases, not every case, but there were a couple of very persuasive witnesses that we thought should be looked at. So what we've said to the government is this is good, needs to be done, this is what the Australian people want, but there are a few elements of the bill that we think need further consideration.
Senator, do you consider that the measures being too tough, as described by some, was sending the wrong message to the community? Is that a consideration?
No. Look, there are a lot of conspiracy theories about this being aimed at particular groups, which I reject completely. Most Australians want a citizenship that is really valued. Most Australians, I believe, and this is one of the surveys, but parliamentarians will tell you this too, a lot of Australians are concerned that, you fill in a form, pay some money and you become a citizen. Well, citizenship's more than that, and so I think Mr Dutton's on the right track. It's just that the bill needs a little bit of clarity, and these conspiracy theories that some of the left-wing witnesses were raising are just, their own conspiracy projects being put into overdrive.
Okay. I just want to ask you quickly about your contribution in Party Room yesterday. You said that that Bill Shorten being Prime Minister would be an awful alternative for the country. There's stronger economic growth, as Scott Morrison has pointed out. You said the government is on the right path on a number of issues, but Bill Shorten is still, or Labor is still ahead in the polls, and you thought that was ridiculous. What is the government doing wrong?
Well, I don't talk about what happens in the Party Room, but I'll give you my own views. And look, the government is doing a great job, and I've been an observer for a long time.
You can be a cynic sometimes, Senator.
But I have seen this government is doing a great job. But unfortunately, people up where I come from, miles away from this building and the Press Council and all the public servants and the Canberra Privileged Society, they just don't understand what's happening, because all they hear about is same-sex marriage, citizenship, the things that really have no interest to most Australians.
What was your recommendation?
Well, as I said, I wasn't going to talk about this, but I did say that I don't have a solution. But look, the government is doing a great job, but the messaging is not there, and the politics is wrong somewhere along the line. And I want Malcolm Turnbull to be Prime Minister. I want the government to succeed, because the thought of Bill Shorten as Prime Minister is just too horrendous. But our vote is fracturing because people don't understand what we're doing. They don't really, they can't grasp the hundreds, thousands of good things this government's done since the last election.
Because your agenda is being swamped by citizenship and
a lot of other,
and same-sex marriage to an extent as well. This is going on in the High Court. I want to ask you a hypothetical. If this plebiscite is deemed not to, won't go forward, this has a risk of perhaps dominating the government's agenda for the end of the year and perhaps into next year. So are you now of a mind that the government needs to do anything just to get this off the agenda and needs to perhaps consider a free vote if this doesn't get up?
No, look, I've been fair on that. We went to the election with a promise. One of the things people don't like about politicians is they make promises before the election and then afterwards change it. Now, I've always been firm, and I think, again, most of my party's the same. We made a promise that we'd have a plebiscite. We're going to do it. And if that doesn't go ahead, and that's hypothetical, as you say, hopefully there'll be some other way to gauge the opinion of the Australian public. Okay. That's what we promised, and I hope that's what we're going to do. But somewhere along the line, we've got to try and get the good news stories out, and it needs, I think, a lot more work by our leaders, our executive, to get the good message out and try and, whilst paying due respect to these other issues, for most Australians, can I tell you, and this is most Australians living not in the capital cities, not in this wonderful world of Canberra, but out in what I call the real world, they just can't understand what's happening.
So Labor's, what you're saying, is just better at politics at the moment?
Well, unfortunately, see, people like Pauline Hanson are articulating some of the concerns, and yet Pauline doesn't have the answers. I mean, she's got no chance of forming a government. She'd be a nice person, though she is, some good thoughts. She can, but she just would not be able to manage government. The only people that can really bring the agenda that I think the Australian people want is the Liberal National Party. But we're not somehow getting that message through. And I'm not saying that Malcolm Turnbull should start talking like Pauline Hanson, but somewhere along the line we've got to get a clearer message across of just what we stand for, how we reflect Australian values, what Australian people want. And unfortunately, I don't think that's happening.
Bring back the three-word slogan, perhaps, or
no, it's not. Look, it just distresses me, and I repeat, I've been around for a long time, but I mix with a lot of people from all walks of life and all age groups. And they just don't understand what's happening, and yet I can say to them, look, sit down with me for half an hour, I can take you, I'll bore you to death with the good things this government's doing that are helping you. But they never hear about it, they don't understand it, they don't get it, and somehow our messaging, our politics is not quite right. Shorten is beating us at that, Hanson's beating us at that, and that's wrong, it's bad for Australia, we've just got to do better.
All right, and certainly in Queensland too. Senator, thanks so much for your time.